Fintech Unions, a bunch of them across Canada, and today we are more than excited to do one in Halifax, our very, very first. For those in person, we are also doing the event online, so hello everybody online. We have people following us from across Canada, so I was looking at the chat earlier on people from Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. Hello everyone. Some of you might know Fintech Unions already. If you don't, we are a nonprofit organization. We've been around for almost 6 years. Our goal is really advancing the financial sector for the better, for helping Canadians have a better financial lives for the better. We do this by organizing a whole bunch of events and programs, and all of our events are focused around 3 main pillars. First one, of course, is education. We really want to help people understand it and better understand the financial sector, and of course the technology sector around finance. The second one is support. We are there to help early stage fintech founders build fintech products. And last but not least, we work in collaboration with a whole bunch of stakeholders, of course, fintechs, but also banks, credit unions, talents, universities, etc., etc. So we're helping people come together and really help create new fintech technologies that Canadians have a better financial lives. I mentioned earlier on we have a whole bunch of programs and events. Just a quick word on a bunch of these that we organize throughout the year. Some of them might be super interesting for people maybe in the room. First one maybe is the certificate. The certificate is a 7-course program where we kind of teach and go over all the basics of fintech. I actually see a few people in the room that I know have taken the certificate class. So if ever you're interested in learning more about fintech, I think this is a really cool program for you. It's a professional program taught by professionals from our network. Another program that we are very proud of and have had for a while now is Ascension. It's an incubation program where we help early stage founders get their first funding. The program lasts about 2 months and finishes by a showcase. It's coming up really soon. We already have our cohort going on right now. So we have our startup showcase pitching their startup at the end of their program, and we invite VCs, we invite angel investors to kind of look at their products and potentially invest in their startup. Another program that's coming up really soon that might be interesting for some of you in the room is the FinTech Challenge. Every year we invite the whole community to come together and think through potential solutions for our existing problems. So we invite our community to pitch problems, and then we invite the community to come together and work on solutions for these problems. It's a bit based like a case competition coming up in September. So if ever some of you, it can be professional, it can be students, if you guys want to work on solutions and really get involved and get your hands dirty, it's a super cool opportunity coming up. IFH Lab, I'll touch a bit more on IFH a bit later on, but it's another program for incubation for early stage founders who are working on impact-driven solutions. It's a 4-month program, no equity, no fee. The applications are opening really soon. Give you a bit more info on that really soon. And last but not least, our last addition to our programs is the FinTech Hub, one that we're very proud of. It's an a la carte program. So for any founders who are starting off all the way to the first Series A, if you want support, the Hub is there for you. There's a whole bunch of coaches that can help you. We have service providers as well. We have amazing partners from across Canada that can also help you. So it's an amazing program.
And the Atlantic division as well.
Yes, we have an Atlantic division as well. That I'm sure they will mention very soon. Last but not least, we also have events that we organize throughout the year. FinTech Drinks, in case you're not unfamiliar because you guys are here. They are panel events where we invite the community to come together, network, get to know each other. We do about 4 or 5 a year across Canada. We're trying to get outside of Montreal because part of our team is based in Montreal, but of course another part of our team is also based in Toronto, and who knows, maybe soon in Halifax. We never know. So yeah, events across Canada is to get the community together and talking about real issues. We do similar events in universities called University Series. Who knows, maybe one in Halifax soon. We invite students to come together and chit chat and get to know potential workers that are in fintechs. So it's a cool opportunity for them also to see what jobs are out there. Last but not least, talking about jobs, we have the FinTech Career Fair. We invite our startups. We had over 50 startups propose jobs for students, and over 2,000 students come to these events looking for jobs in fintech. We, of course, had put it aside for a while because of COVID, but eventually we'll have another one very soon inviting students to potentially get a job in fintech. If you want to know more about us, we have a whole bunch of socials. Please feel free to follow us on our socials. Feel free to send us emails. Feel free to visit our website if you want more information. We're always there for you guys. Of course, this event in Halifax wouldn't be possible without our partners at Atlantic Fintech. And without further ado, I would like to maybe invite Barb to give you a bit more information.
To Karina Marina for bringing your FinTech drinks to Halifax. We've been working with the FinTech Kings team for about a year now, and this is the first time we've actually met them in person, so we're really thrilled to have FinTech drinks here and actually be able to hold an event that's starting to connect people interested in FinTech across Atlantic Canada. So Atlantic FinTech is an initiative that we've been working on. Alicia Roisman is not here, who's going to be on the panel, and myself, for about 4 years, putting some pieces together and really creating this database and map of what's going on across Atlantic Canada. For those of you who are online, there's actually a lot going on in Atlantic Canada with FinTech. So we partnered with Fathom Foresight and Super Britain last summer to put together a map of what's going on in Atlantic Canada. And at that time, there were over 140 companies that are in FinTech, and I would say at this point, it's well over 150. And those companies cover the whole spectrum of FinTech. There's PayTech, blockchain and crypto, wealth management, LendTech, RegTech, InsurTech, PropTech, AgTech. There's a lot happening in Atlantic Canada. We just don't see it because over COVID, we were all sitting in our own homes and not out and seeing what's going on. Those companies employ over 4,500 people in Atlantic Canada. And I guess the biggest one all of us know is Verifin and the great success they've had. But how are we going to create and support our next Verifin? Because I'm quite sure that company is sitting here already in Atlantic Canada. And on top of that, as we build this ecosystem across Atlantic Canada, there is a strong presence of FinTech-related enterprise companies. And particularly when we look at what's going on here in Nova Scotia, they've done a great job even during COVID in attracting in these large enterprise companies who need talent. There's people who can see issues in those companies that help to spin out new ideas and new companies. So I think we have a lot to build on in the region to strengthen the sector that we have. So our mission with Atlantic FinTech is to increase the industry knowledge, to shorten the learning curve for our entrepreneurs, and increase the visibility of Atlantic FinTech companies, the leadership and the innovations in global markets. We want to be able to help our companies get into those platforms and the channels and connect with the experts that they need to do to be successful or even more successful. So as Karina mentioned, one of the programs that we've been running in partnership with FinTech Kings is the FinTech Hub. So for early stage entrepreneurs, this is a great portal that has lots of resources and mentors. There's webinars, there's access to expertise in that Atlantic division, and would encourage any of you who might have an idea to reach out and see if there's content in the FinTech Hub that can help you along your path. For us at Atlantic FinTech, we really focus on these kind of activities that we believe are going to help build the sector. So we help companies access the right resources, and often those are industry experts and the networks that we have, who bring to the companies the intelligence of the FinTech sector of what's happening, what are those big banks or the larger companies looking for with respect to technology, what's in their roadmaps, how do we connect our local companies if we know what you're doing in your plans and where you want to go, how do we connect you with those opportunities, and then how to help you identify those strategic channels and partners to do that. So this is really the activities with Atlantic FinTech that we are focused on doing. And we definitely can't build this sector alone. So to date, we've had fantastic support from ACOA financially. We've taken a number of delegations to Money 2020 and FinTech Meetup with the support of the 4 Atlantic provinces and ACOA. And with Leak Data, this week alone, they were part of a hosting committee to the Credit Union Technology Forum and made it possible for us to highlight to those delegates from the Credit Union Technology vertical within the credit unions. What's happening not just in Atlantic Canada with fintechs and highly separate companies, but even with fintechs across Canada. And so we're very grateful for those partnerships because we can't build this alone. We need a lot of different inputs and the participation of the community to do that. And to contact us, we have email, website. Alicia and I are here and happy to chat with anyone about what's going on in Atlantic Canada.
Thank you so much. I was mentioning earlier on that we talked about IFH Lab. Our applications are now open, so if you are a fintech founder working on an impact-driven solution, we have an amazing program that's coming up right now. Applications close on Monday, so feel free to reach out if you're thinking it might be a solution that may be interesting for you. So yeah. Now, I'm guessing you guys are all excited for the panel section, and so am I. Without further ado, I would like to invite my three panelists over. So Ken Shi from East Coast Credit Union, Carrie Forbes from Big Data, and Alicia Roseman from Atlantic Fintech. Just a quick word that you guys have water on the side. So, okay, first off, before we start off any questions, I mean, you guys all have amazing CVs. So maybe a quick intro for our panel, for our whole room. I'd start with you, maybe, Alicia.
Great, thank you. I am originally born and raised in Argentina, grew most of my professional life in Israel, was a serial entrepreneur in fintech, and came to Canada 5 years ago to discover that Atlantic Canada has a lot of fintech entrepreneurs and fintech companies that were under the radar. And then I partnered with Bob to launch Atlantic Fintech to help these entrepreneurs and fintechs shine and get more known in the world. And I'm very happy where we are today.
Ken?
Ken Shea, I'm President and CEO of East Coast Credit Union. East Coast Credit Union is the largest credit union in Nova Scotia, one of the largest in Atlantic Canada. I started my career with the credit union back in 2004 after a long career with the bad guys. I worked with one of the banks for a while, but saw the light. And over the last 20 years, we've progressively grown. Our team's done a great job taking us from about 100 million to about 1.2 billion. We now have over 250 employees and we're in 18 locations. So, a little bit about
Nice.
And I'm Carrie Forbes, I'm the CEO of Lead Data, and Lead Data is a very interesting organization. We are essentially the enterprise fintech company and technology provider for the credit unions in Atlantic Canada. And we've actually been around since 1975, which puts us as an old fintech, a really old startup. And like Ken, I started my career with one of the bad guys. And I also had some public sector background as well. And those combinations were really interesting fit for Lead Data. So very happy to be here.
Wonderful. I feel you guys are very complimentary. I have the fintech representative, I have the credit union, and I have the both. So it will be an amazing and very interesting panel to have all of your views. By the way, for the people who see me on my phone, I leave my questions and questions from the public are there, so I'm just not texting, but it's just maybe to start off with our first question, when we're talking about fintech innovation, we often talk about fintech startups, we often talk about banks, and we don't often talk about credit unions, but they do have a very important role when it comes to fintech innovation. How do credit unions view fintechs and what's their view on them?
Well, we see fintechs, I think, as opportunities to serve our members better. So oftentimes we'll have pain points in our relationship with members that fintechs can help us fill that gap. And because we're a little bit smaller as financial institutions, we can take a little bit of risk and try something different and maybe do something new. But at the same time, we need all the same connectivities and securities that are required for the larger institutions. So you're building a framework that allows you to operate in the rest of the world, but you're doing it in a place where you can actually test and try some things. And often in our business anyway, we're very focused on the member experience and trying to develop that. So often fintechs are looking for those problems or areas to solve and then helping us do that. So sometimes there's some really neat things that can run in those relationships.
I want to take on what you said about the community that you are serving and how close you are to the community. I think that fintechs don't understand yet, and many start to understand that was not really before, is that they are trying to get to the largest banks because, of course, the volumes and the scale is so big, and they want to be there because of the opportunity financially. But credit unions have the best sight and knowledge of what their members need. They are very close to them. They really can represent the members the best. And by starting to have more relations and conversations with the credit unions and fine-tuning their solutions with the support of the credit unions, many times as a design partner, they can really get to better products, but they really need to understand the state of mind of the credit unions, and that's where the organizations like that are supporting the credit unions come into play. And we are trying really to connect better the fintechs to these organizations and to the credit unions, because it's a lot of value for them there.
So just to carry on what Alicia's saying, Karen, if you were to look in Wikipedia and look up Canadian banking firsts and innovations, you're going to see a majority of them are by credit unions. And part of that is because the value that they have for the member, and if you look at the cooperative values, really drives them not just to do it for profit, but for great good. So that also really enables them to think differently and then come up with really creative solutions. And it's interesting because along my journey, often, like we're saying, well, I'm going to try to get to the big bank. And that was Verafin's story at first. They tried. And they actually went through credit union to get that traction because they saw that value. So those are, when we think about it, it's very creative, sometimes a little chaotic, but in a good way. But there's where the collaboration also comes in.
Super interesting. Super interesting. My next question was actually just that. So we often tell fintechs to work directly with credit unions. It's apparently an easier entry point. But is this 100% true, or there's still, I guess, there's still favorites?
Well, there's pain points.
I would like to start by saying that there is nothing easy in working with an institution. Doesn't matter if it's small or big. Easy, of course, is far from the vocabulary of the fintech entrepreneur, but there is more approachable. You can talk directly with the people that really make the decisions and the ones that they are aware of the problems or can understand the priority of what you are trying to solve. So talking to the financial industry from the standpoint of the credit unions may not be relevant to all the fintechs, of course, but there are a lot of fintechs that can benefit a lot by starting their journey actually into the credit union space and really connect to their community, connect to their audience, learn exactly what they need and how they access to those services or solutions, and then really start thinking about scale or going to that. But working with the credit unions for those that are relevant changes their path and can really accelerate their success, of course, at the end of the day, that comes as a mutual benefit for the credit union and for their members. If the benefit is not also for the members, it's not relevant for the credit union.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think the other thing that's really important is partnership. So it's all about trying to find that thing you're trying to solve and then working together. And I think it takes a really good plan, making sure that you're connected, that you've got lots of feedback loops and points of connection along the way as you work through the development. There's nothing worse, I don't think, than working with somebody that doesn't really see you as a partner or as somebody they're trying to benefit and help. And so trying to make sure that there is that symbiosis or relationship that's working for both, I think is vital to the success. And I think on the other side of it, as you said, Alicia, it's really about trying to make sure you're solving a problem for the member and then trying to find that way to convert that into a new product. So I don't care if you had anything you wanted to add.
That's just on, as we were thinking earlier about, is it easier? It's not, but let's say, working with a bank, there's a lot of advantages. There's certain things but it's a certain model. And, you don't really necessarily get as much of the pie or as much say or autonomy over certain design, certain things because the bank has its view. And that's not to criticize, it's just different. In the credit union space, it's different, but it brings a whole other set of challenges. Scale, funding, different regulatory frameworks, challenges with cybersecurity, and we also use a lot of partners. So it's a lot of working in a big ecosystem itself, and you have to be able to work with a whole bunch of different organizations that weave into one service. That's not for the faint of heart, and sometimes that can be very frustrating. So I think it sounds really great, but we have to go in it with eyes wide open.
Wonderful. Yeah, you guys have been touching a lot on the point of the security issue, the compliance issue, and I think it's a major roadblock we often see when fintechs want to work with banks. They often hit that roadblock. They don't have the same compliance. They don't have the bandwidth to have the same compliance. Is it the same thing with credit unions? Are there the same restrictions? And if so, how can startups work around that?
That's a tough one. I would say that yes, we do, because we are regulated just like the banks. We do have many similar cybersecurity, security compliance regulations. Our online banking is just as secure as the other financial institutions. So it gives you the chance to work with an organization that has a lot of those things. One of the differences, I think, though, is because of local management, there's a little more opportunity to talk about what we can do to kind of deal with certain elements of that. And sometimes there are opportunities. We still have to meet the benchmarks that are required, but I think there's a little bit more opportunity to at least discuss how we can find ways to work together to get through those. Where you may get just a flat no if you can't meet this particular bar, you're done. When you go to the other institutions, you might get a little bit more of a reception, not necessarily a yes, but maybe a little more conversation, I think, if you're dealing with the credit.
With the other thing, when we're dealing with compliance and what we call regulatory, I think about this from the innovation and the development perspective, is for credit unions, we have limited budgets. And so often the requirements to meet that are always changing, and again, can be different jurisdictions, will also eat away at that budget, which takes away from innovation. And sometimes difficult choices have to be made. And that can be really frustrating along the way. But when we can collaborate, like what Ken says, sometimes we can find ways to not only overcome those, but maybe even innovate something forward. So again, it's sort of like looking at the problems a bit differently. But certainly I think that's a big concern for credit unions, and probably an area that they could use a lot of help with, is how to manage those processes and things, how they track into audit, and help keep them able to manage with limited resources.
Yeah, I think that this is also an opportunity to learn, meaning the fintechs sometimes come from the assumptions that it's all or nothing. You need to have all the compliance in the world or none of it. And in reality, fintechs have many options when it comes to compliance, according to the platform they work with, or where they integrate, or which data they are actually touching, or a lot of parameters that change completely the compliance and regulatory environment for that fintech. When they go to larger financial institutions, that aspect needs to have already been resolved. They expect you to come already with all the solutions and the results that you know perfectly well what you need to do to be compliant to them. And anything needs to be audited, they know. When you talk to the credit unions and those that are serving their communities and have their partners that around them, you can come also with some unknown. You can say that this is what you are trying to solve, that this is your technology does. And they can also be more open to tell you, I would like to work with you if you have this type of compliance, or actually I get that type of solutions from that platform. I can help you connect to them, and maybe they would like to collaborate with you to launch that platform, your solution to, credit unions like me. But all that, learning experience or the ability to cut your learning curve in a way can only be with this type of organizations and partners, that when you are genuine and you're talking open to them and you're saying things like they are, they also can help you know how to be in the place you need to be to work with them, if they, of course, are interested in the solution. But when you go directly to financial institutions of a certain size, that attention doesn't exist. Either you bring all the answers, or you're not relevant to them.
super interesting perspective. So we see that there's an opening for partnership. Let's jump into that then. What sectors are we most likely to see partnerships between credit unions and fintechs? You guys have some examples in mind?
I think, payments is always going to be, and that's an ever evolving. I mean, that space, especially in the last 5 years, it continues. And I think, as we start to think about things like how that layers into generative AI, who knows where that could go. So I think that's going to be a very, very challenging space, because again, when you think cybersecurity, that's the other area that the impact. And then so the cyber on that is going to be another area. I think RegTech is becoming really, really huge, and there's a lot of that, especially in, the audit, compliance, regulatory. We're seeing a lot of those things, like we were talking earlier. So those I think are some of the ones we're seeing kind of bubbling up a lot. And again, responding to some really big needs that, as we see the world getting more complex, pulling on those things, which I think compared to even like 6 years ago, we were focused much more on this front end product and what was going to be winning the customers. So that flip is really starting to take hold.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of opportunity though on the front end for innovation and trying to find better ways to reach members. But there's also some back end stuff that you didn't mention, like there's administration, there's different ideas around how we kind of can work together to automate processes and make it easier for organizations to do their work with more automation, more AI as it becomes more available. So I think the kind of like the world's your oyster as far as financial institutions. There's a lot of opportunity for different parts of the business that can be helped by fintech, I think. And so it's just, trying to find that niche and the pain points and then trying to find the right solution. I think that's really where you need to focus. But there's definitely lots of opportunity in all those areas.
And from the fintechs we know and are aware of in our region, we see many of them that could be working much more with the credit unions in the region and are not aware about it, and it's something that we are helping connect. But it's mainly companies that have developed solutions that are not, doesn't require deep integration into too many systems to work with these type of organizations, because at the end of the day, the credit unions are servicing their community through platforms that are a part of the organization that serve them, like the big data that are their CIO, and they have their needs to serve the community, and they have their capabilities provided by the platform. So a company that is trying to work with them, with their communities, can't come with big technology that requires changes in the systems they're using, and they make a multi-year project in order for them to provide a solution. So, of course, there are certain technologies or companies that are not relevant, but I can tell you from the companies we see around, most of the companies could work with the credit unions in a way or another, and could benefit both the members of the credit union and themselves, and they are not yet very aware of how that works. And really, these type of events, the conference and what they carry and the credit unions are doing, are really changing that for the companies in the region.
Super interesting. Well, talking about that, what is the best practice for credit unions and fintechs to partner? Is there like a roadmap that they should follow, or like something they should have in mind? And I'd be curious to have the perspective of fintechs, but also credit unions on both sides. Like, is there a holy grail of an example maybe that can, that we should follow? Just asking.
I wish there were. Actually, I think you're hitting on probably the biggest opportunity we have as a system, as a cooperative system. And part of, I think, what we're trying to get at in our conference and the idea of collaboration that we had here. For a long time, technology kind of was, we're the enabler, let's put it that way. And so being at the table to think through was more or less, no, I'll tell you what I want, we go in, make it, and bring it back, and get it wrong, do the dance back and forth, etc. But now we have this opportunity, like you say, and it's about efficiency too. When we think about how this works on our end, if we're investing our time and resources, we really want this to work because we don't have a lot of fail time. Like there's not a whole lot of capacity for that. And likewise, that investment of time, people, energy, you can only go to that so many times for that. And then it becomes really difficult. So we as a system haven't really figured out, I think, an effective way to account for I'd say a lot of those components, but also varying systems. So right now we're all in stages of technology transformation, and the harmony of, say, being able to connect to the API layer is something we all want to strive for. We're all not there yet. So, you probably don't want to have to do a solution 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 times. So when we talk about roadmap, that's the goal. How can we as a system better collaborate to think about those needs that we can all start to contribute and then find appropriate vendors for solving those problems? It doesn't have to be wide, it can be in certain regions, but it's certainly something I think that we definitely need to do a better job of.
I want to also add that the startups need to think a little more about focusing on solving a specific issue, a specific need. Too many startups come to their, prospects or their clients trying to solve everything. They have like this jack of all trades that does everything the client needs for all their problems they have resolved, and trying to develop all in one platform. And at the end, it may become like that over the years, that company will have that huge platform doing everything, but it doesn't start like that. If you really want to work with the financial industry at all, in all their sizes, and of course, when you can collaborate and learn and work with partners in the credit union, first, really focus on something that is an important need of the credit union and their members. Second, try to synthesize it in the minimum need. Don't go to solve everything around it. And the third is do your homework. Yes, they are great for collaboration. They have a lot of knowledge, but they also don't have all the time in the world, okay? They are serving their clients, their members. They're trying to do their best to keep the platforms ready, security. They're doing a lot of digital transformation because technology is changing so fast. You can't use their time to learn from scratch what could solve the problem for the members, okay? So you need to come with some clear, real vision of what you're trying to solve, something you really know. And of course, if it matches the need of the members, they will be more than happy to help you fine-tune that, but not using it as your supporter to learn everything from them. Come after you do your homework and focus on something specific that really brings value to the members and to the credit union itself.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's finding that one thing versus trying to solve all the problems, because we have had a lot of experience in the past with fintech where I call it vaporware, lots of promises, but not a lot of delivery. And that is the best way to ruin your business in the short run, I think, and long run. So try and make sure you really do have an understanding what your market is, what you're trying to help us solve. And then it makes it easier for us to make decisions too, because we can contain that to one part of our business. We're not necessarily affecting all the pieces. When we try this technology, we can grow together, build on our successes instead of having to try to boil the ocean. So usually if you have that strategy where you kind of pick the one thing, you're going to be a lot more successful.
Wonderful. So focus on one thing, and then you mentioned that credit unions, their focus is really customer experience. So let's brainstorm together. How can fintechs help credit unions achieve their goal of better serving their customers?
I will start from the fintech point of view, because of course I am not on the credit union side, although I can relate to it. I think that you need to think of yourself as the member of the credit, okay? You are, even I would say, be a member of a credit union. Work with a credit union. Be there and understand what services are they delivering, how they offer added value to you, how they look at you as a client, okay? So when you're a member of a credit union and you're using their services, it's the only way you can really come with a solution to something and talk to them on their level, on the level of their members, and don't try to learn everything from research in Google or even the ChatGPT, okay? Really try to feel it, to experience it, be there, be the member of the credit union. Only then you can really talk and have that conversation with the credit unions and their platforms on what you want to improve, how your technology will work, how the members will access the service, why is it important. If you have not done that, you have no real value for the credit union and the members.
Those are all excellent points. So I would echo those. And also it's really, for us in a lot of spaces, it's about reducing friction for people to do their financial business. Really, that's, one of the places where I think fintech can really fit and serve a niche with members and with credit unions. So it's trying to help us fix member experience issues, whether they be in online transactions or they could be, how do we help people get a loan faster? How do we help people give us the information we need to do whatever process we're doing, whether it's opening an account or creating a mortgage, whatever. And those kind of things, I think, are the things that will allow you to get an audience and then actually be able to produce a product that we can use and that our members will find valuable.
So I think what I can add to this, from my perspective, working as we work together, for example, to support and put into place what Kennedy's for his members, be prepared to be a partner, not a vendor. And there's a big difference, right? So we really need partners because we are relying not just on your labor. We want your mind share. We want you to participate in it. And that also means that we have to come together on the principles and work to those. So when going gets tough, and it will, we'll have times we're going to disagree, when we're not going to necessarily see things the same way. We're going to have to work through to get to the solution. There's where things can get very, very ugly. So the best partners that we have, and I'm not even talking about the fintech startup, I mean our enterprise partners. It's the same principle. And the ones that do it really well, they learn and they build bigger and better, right? Because it's part of that. You gotta have the passion for it, right? Otherwise it becomes a contract and it just becomes this thing. I see some nods from people doing that before. So that's really important because, again, your reputation and how that's going to go. And I'll tell you something, the credit unions are very connected and word travels fast, very fast. And it's good and it's bad, because if it's really good, it can be a huge win. But if it's bad, it's usually around the partnership. Are they easy to work with? Because if not, that can really drag their time down. We're spending more time trying to solve those issues than work on what we really need to focus on.
Super interesting perspective for fintechs who want to collaborate with credit unions. Wow. Okay, maybe I'd like to maybe take a step back. A question that I think I should have maybe touched on a bit earlier on is maybe let's talk about the role of credit unions and fintechs according to region. Does it change from region to region? Like, what's the role of these organizations, for example, the Atlantic region versus other regions? Like to hear yours. Okay.
Maybe I'll start. It's fun when I chat with the other credit unions across the country and the other technology companies. They tend to follow the communities and their economic kind of situations. So you tend to see, for example, in the prairies, a lot of ag tech and the support of ag tech. I think you see ocean tech here in Atlanta, for example. So that is really fascinating. And when you look at the growth of fintech in especially rural community, this is where it's really interesting. And I think COVID also put a big spotlight on those. And that's sort of in different industries, but when you go down even to the root of the fintech side, there's not really a ton of differentiation sometimes. So there's things that can cross that we can learn. But that's some of what we see, at least on our end.
I can say that I see more fintechs in our region that look at processes and how to improve processes, how to bring efficiency in management of platforms, in enabling services, and less of the front end of the application, mobile application for some specific experience. I think that our region is more connected to the back end, maybe because of the history we have with call centers and along the knowledge on billing and everything that happens in the back end of large corporations. That gave us a real technology and understanding from a lot of entrepreneurs on that type of abilities and topics.
That's how I get started.
Here we have. So that is something that I think could be a differentiation. It doesn't mean that they can work only with a local, of course, credit unions and the platform, but it's a differentiation for the fintechs we have around. They are more conscious on the need to improve processes and be efficient and bring multiple platforms to collaborate, to connect them, to exchange data or control the systems, than when I see fintechs from other places. I see more B2C or fintechs that are going more to the consumer or to the front end, even if it's B2B. So that's my perspective at least.
Yeah, I think from the credit union perspective, I think we work a little bit differently at LAN Canada, although as a system across the country, we try very hard to work together. I think at LAN Canada does a little bit better job of that. So often when you're working with an Atlantic credit union, you are working with one, but that's because you're doing the pilot versus working with one because you're only going to work with one. So I think it's important for entrepreneurs and fintech entrepreneurs to think about that, because that opportunity may be different because of the way our structure is and the way that we work together. And it could create a much easier path to get you rolling than maybe working with one credit union somewhere else. And so I think it makes LAN Canada kind of a neat incubator for this kind of product and service, because of the fact that there are these pockets of our, and I don't think it's just credit unions, I think Atlantic unions in general tend to work better together, because we're not really about trying to take stuff from each other, we're about trying to create things that we can take to other places. So I think if we keep that in mind, often we can build stronger relationships in the long term.
And I want to add to that, don't think that when you close an agreement or partnership or work with a credit union, you will close all your revenue needs until you get to your exit with that credit union. Remember that that's not your total market, okay? Treat it as it is in terms of fine-tuning your solution, understanding better the end user and the community you're serving and their needs, how to connect to the platforms, integrate, and your deployment strategies. Don't take it as the hard sale that you need to do in order to bring the maximum revenue from that specific prospect, because that's not the real target you have when you're working with one credit union. The first one that is working with you as a partner is to have a better product that is delivered the right way to the real need of that user or community member from the credit union. So keep that in mind.
Very great insights. For all founders who are in the room or hearing at home, I'm sure this is music to their ears and really good advice. Time flies. I'm already in my last question, but I want to maybe mention that we will have time for a question or two. So if the public has any questions, feel free to start formulating in your head. So my last question for you guys is, we're experiencing a lot of changes right now, with the economy, environment as well, even regulatory. We're talking about, we've been talking for many years now in Canada of having maybe clear open banking frameworks. How do you guys think that will change collaborations between credit unions and fintechs in the future? Maybe 5 years, 10 years, whatever time span you guys have in mind.
Well, I am a positive person. I actually think that this is a great news coming for the credit unions and their platform, because one thing that they excel at and are really, really strong there is a relation with the banks. When you work with the largest banks, you really don't have any specific reason not to change banks just because you have a slight difference between one to the other. You don't have a specific loyalty or feeling of community. But when you know that your credit union is in your community, serving the community, they have helped you and your parents and your grandparents when you have that business in your region, or you have that need that only that person can help you because they know you from your life, they know exactly how you are. That's completely different. And open banking will help the financial networks to provide more services, more value, easier, but it will not replace that relation. That relation can't be replaced by an application with faster communications and automatic data with AI. The relation between the person that really understands you and know you, that can offer you the best services and help you make the right decisions for your financial life, it will not be replaced with AI.
Thank you. No, credit unions, I think, are well placed with the open banking environment. I think it does create an opportunity, but it is one of those ones that we'll have to really work hard to make sure we understand and we have the right tools, because we don't want to lose our best members because of 0.01 on a rate, but at the same time, we know that we can deliver on the relationship and continue to grow their make their financial life easier and continue to serve them. And I think the nice thing with open banking is it will provide some of the information that we might lack in, we'll look at a relationship and we'll know that there's something else going on, but we won't be able to help them with that because we're not sure. But now we'll be able to ask if it's okay to get the information, we'll get the information, and then we can actually know what we can do to serve them. So I think there's some significant opportunities. I think it will come with some risks too for organizations if they're not able to adopt it, not able to take advantage of the information both they have internally and some of the stuff that's going to be provided externally. And I think it is another one of those opportunity areas where having the right partners could help us to make sure that we're able to take advantage of those opportunities and serve people better. So hopefully there'll be lots of relationships that will be built over the long term with that partner. That's what I see over the next 5 to 10 years.
I think with open banking, as well as you mentioned things like ESG and all these issues that raise risk, when we think about how technology plays a role in that, you're starting to see, again, we've got concern, do I understand these things? Am I protected? What about things like digital identity? How is that going to play? How are we going to, make sure that we're protecting all of these new services and making sure they're there? So now you're seeing, we've got to answer those questions, which become opportunities. So as the risk environment gets more complex, we've got to manage that complexity. Because at the end of the day, at the credit union, we want to focus on the experience. And the more time, what happens is we end up spending more of that time dealing with those issues, and that can take away from the opportunity. So therein lies, again, some of those things outside of what the exciting things like microservices, this world where Imagine Ken's Credit Union has created this really cool lending program in his community that takes off and others are interested in another part. Now we've got mechanisms for them to kind of collaborate and share and make other opportunities that we didn't have before. But we've got to do it safely. So therein lies that balance. But again, opportunities for us to solve.
Wonderful. So a bright future. You guys are very positive. I like it. Wonderful. We have about 2 minutes, so I'm going to invite my co. Oh my God. Okay, so I'm pretty sure when the ladies raise their hands first, so I'll go for Madame here. Just say it very loud because people who have a hard time hearing, so I'll probably repeat it after.
Sure. For credit unions, what share of wallet does the credit union take? And what I mean by that is, do they do all your banking with a credit union, or do they then do some things that you don't offer with other banks or other types of organizations?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of members that are almost solely with us. Like all financial institutions, though, I think there's a lot of sharing going on. So it could be single service with a number of people where we have, just the loan, just the mortgage and account. We have other pieces. Over the last, I want to say 10, 20 years, we've developed a lot of different products, wealth management, different outlets for to be able to serve the complete package of a member's needs. And there's always work to do, obviously, but through partnerships, we've managed to get most of the services available. We tend to have a fairly strong following as well in smaller commercial, I could say under $5-10 million in borrowings, because they tend to be overlooked a little bit by other institutions. So it's trying to find the right niches, I think, where we can really supply the power and the talent to make those things work and work for both the member and for the credit union.
I had a double hand in the back.
I'll follow the conference protocol. So it's Peter Deforth with iComply, a RegTech company in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I have 2 questions, and maybe first one, it's Ken, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ken, a question for you with regards to, would you prefer to procure technologies directly from a RegTech company directly, or would you rather go to one of your SI partners to procure that technology? And my second question, this is more for Carrie, but for both of you. Like, so when you are looking at fintech companies, like what is the process for procurement? How does a small Canadian company compete with some of our US friends and global competitors? So like because I at the conference the last couple of days, I've noticed like, Interact, they're looking at US and international things. They're not really looking at Canadian solutions. And so I just want to put those two questions to you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, so we've done a combination of things over time. So sometimes it's through our technology partner that we, and it depends on the product and service and how it's being delivered. So it would depend a lot on the fintech and what problem they're trying to solve. If it's more member related, then there could be opportunity for that direct relationship. If it's more systems based, it's probably more, we're going to refer it maybe over to our system partner so that they can kind of help us understand how this is going to fit into our ecosystem. But at the end of the day, we do have to make sure that all the pieces fit into our ecosystem. So that is a bit of a determiner too, once we start to work with any of these organizations, is trying to figure out what impact it's going to have on the overall ecosystem. And that sometimes determines where we have to place it, I guess. I think I've answered that right, Carrie, but you may have more to add.
Well, I think part of what I'm hearing in your question is there's a real challenge, and it's changing as we change the architectures to go digital, and we have API-based connectivity. But before that, for a lot of credit unions who aren't there yet, when you do an integration, you have to do it into the core banking system. That's primarily what we do at Lead Data. It is very expensive. Like, it would cost an average of $500,000 for one connection and take 18 months of time, right? And also, because we're small, what happens is we aggregate all of our credit unions, and they will often work with one product to try to make that, work to standardize and get the value and the efficiency and the cost. So it's not just as simple as selling one-to-one, because he may want some other credit unions to go in this, and then we've got a bigger pool. And then the second part is that it has to be compatible with the ecosystem that they have built, because they share an environment. So it will have standards, it could be, your ITIL, all those things. So we have to also work that through, which is really important for fintechs as well. What are we working with? What are those standards? So this is where it's kind of fun, because as an SI partner, a lot of it is, and I used to work with what we call like the Department of No in the past. A lot of that is because of constraints. And so as the constraints we solve for those, we're getting to a point where I'll call the things that Ken probably doesn't want to worry about, the pipes, the back end. That's where we're probably going to do most of our collective collaboration, right? That's the expensive part of the standards. But now we start to get up into our API layer. We can start to think about more individual. We can think about, does it make sense for us to do? If we add value to it, then we would. But if we don't add value, or we're not mitigating risk, then guess what? I probably don't want to take that capacity either. So there's a bit of a dance, and that's just in our Atlantic system. But again, as you look at the other way credit unions operate, a heavy dependence on the architecture dictates their opportunities. So, and in Canada for a long time, depending on what core you were in, you were kind of stuck into like a walled garden. And so you do see some of that. So that might be part of what you're seeing today.
Thank you. I think I have one last question. Yeah.
Hello, welcome FinTech Leaders to Halifax. I hope you realize there is a lot of energy and enthusiasm in the area, and that you are welcome to come back. Thank you, FinTech. And thank you to the previous members of the audience. I think another part of the audience is represented today by students. So I'd like to set the context of my question. I'm Maria Bucurar. I'm an associate professor of finance at Dalhousie University. And I have two observations, and I'd like to ask a question for each of the members very briefly, including for you, Karina. Two facts. If you ask a student majoring in finance or in our commerce program at Dalhousie or management program, how many of you would like to work for a credit union once you graduate? Probably the answer would have been close to 0%. Now, after Kerry came and talked to students, I've had students absolutely voluntarily disclosing they would love to work for a credit union because of the values they identify with the principles and so on. Second fact, if you ask students, let's say 5 years ago, how many of you would like to go into fintech? It was all about investment banking. And it still is, I have to say. So fortunately, we do have a class, a fintech class, that we are in our 5th years of offering at DAL. So I would like for each of you, if there is one word or something that you would like the students to take away, students in this audience, I see some MBA students, some undergrad students, what would you like them to know, or what would you like to share? Thank you.
I will start with the fintechs, okay? I would like you to know that although you almost don't hear about it much, there are a lot of fintechs around you. Fintechs doing and working on solutions that will be, a market all around the world, okay? And will be deployed with the large corporations or institutions anywhere. So you may think that you need to look at other regions to find your future in a large company that does technology for the financial industry, but look first around you. There are amazing opportunities with very good companies that have really world-class technologies, very good entrepreneurs that are doing a fantastic job with the right solutions that will change the world. So I hope that you will stay in our region and bring all your knowledge to advance those companies, to create new ones even, and to bring our region to be one of the top centers in fintech in the world.
Okay, I would say that credit unions are a much underappreciated part of our financial economy. And so I think that when people think about them, they think of, I always call it my grandma's credit union, the place where you have a savings account instead of putting the money under the mattress. But we've changed a lot over the last 25 or 30 years, and we're going to change a lot more over the next 25 or 30 years. And there are tremendous opportunities for long careers in credit unions. And because you're working in a smaller financial institution, you get exposed to things that would take you years and years at another financial institution maybe to understand. So I think there's some tremendous opportunities for younger people starting out. If they're willing to take that chance, there could be a very long and very rewarding career. And that's one of the things I would like you to take away from today.
So perhaps I'll talk a little bit about kind of follow up Maria's classes and some of the questions I got from some students and maybe what I shared with them for this audience. So part of it is we tend to put ourselves in a box. Well, I studied this is what I was supposed to do, and I don't know how I would move myself around, or am I a good fit? And especially if it's fintech you're interested in, you've got maybe the finance background. I think there's such a diversity of ideas you can bring regardless of what you've studied, and it's a continuing learning environment. Like, there's always things to learn. So what I share with them is follow your energy and your curiosity into the space and get to know it, because you can apply what you're learning in many ways in credit unions. And I think what's great, like when you go to a credit union, you kind of wear all the hats, so you can see that whole operation that in a large bank, you're probably not going to get that kind of experience, which is really cool. That might even lead you into a technical path. It's easy to kind of move around. But the thing of it is, if you think of it solely in terms of titling and the role, you'll miss, I think, the passion that you need to have for this space. You really got to love the movement and the human side of it, which comes with it. And that's also part of the fun side. But it's where you get to see those problems we're trying to talk about. And so there's where the curiosity has to come in. So don't box yourself out. And again, get to know the industry, like these things that are here, talk to people who have been in it. And a lot of us have different backgrounds. I actually have an arts degree. And so ended up just accidentally working at a call center, thought I'd stay there a year, and then learned in this new evolving, this job didn't exist, I couldn't plan for it. And that's the other thing. We don't know what jobs are going to exist probably 2, 3, 4 years from now. So that curiosity, if we're too linear, we're going to miss the fun sidetrack. So that would be my little kind of career type advice in terms of stepping your toes into the credit union space.
I think everything's been said, and it's true. And actually, I just maybe want to add one thing is every year we organize a fintech career fair. Because of that, we want students to understand that there are jobs outside of corporate, big corporates, big banks. And every year we see it, the coolest jobs are always in startups or smaller companies like credit unions. So go for those jobs. You will learn 100 times more. Thank you for the question, Maria. Thank you for answering. I think that's pretty much all we had in terms of time, but for the people here, there is, of course, some more networking. There's some more drinks, there's some more food. For people at home, more networking if you guys want to stay and chit-chat with the other people online. And of course, this is not a goodbye, this is a au revoir, à la prochaine. We're going to have another event, that's for sure. It was amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming.
All the people here, sorry, holding for online. We have a secret code for the secret pub in Halifax. So those that stay for the networking may get that code and the instructions on how to get into the secret pub. So enjoy the networking.
Thank you.